Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Comic Source Podcast. Real treat for you today. We're here to talk about an upcoming Image book. The book is called Bug Wars. I have the writer, Jason Aaron, and the artist, Mahmud Asrar, joining me to talk about the book. Gentlemen, thanks for taking the time to chat with me today.
Hey,
Yeah,
thanks for
thanks for
having
having
us.
us, man. Yeah.
Yeah, and you sent over a copy of the book. I got a chance to read it already. I really enjoyed it. It was so fun. It's such a huge adventure, and not at all. I don't know what I was expecting necessarily, but this really exceeded my expectations. So I'm going to throw it over to you first, Jason. Why don't you give everybody kind of the elevator pitch? Let them know what Bug Wars is about.
Yeah, it's kind of a combination of the two of the different types of stories where you have the one where there's sort of civilizations of tiny people who live among kind of live in secret at our feet, whether that's like the littles or the borrowers or we've seen a lot of different versions of that over the years. Then there's the kind of stories of a normal sized human who gets shrunk down and goes on an adventure, right? Like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids is a good example of that. So this is both of those. This is a kid who gets shrunk, finds some mysterious artifact, shrinks him to the size of a bug, and he discovers there's this entire, landscape of different kingdoms of tiny bug warriors that are existing in his backyard, his huge backyard in the country in Alabama. So that's typically the kind of setup you would see for like a kid story, right? But this is decidedly not a kid story. I mean, the main character is a teenager, but this is not a kid story, and this is the dark and brutal and violent version of that kind of story. So, I've said it's like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids meets Game of Thrones.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it. And I'll throw it over to you, Mahmoud. Jason's talking about how I don't want to use the word mature necessarily, but it is.
Oh, it's mature.
Okay. Well,
We
I mean,
can use that
yeah,
word.
yeah. It seems to be a
That's
very
what it'll
serious.
say
Yeah.
on the cover. That'll be the cover rating.
Okay. Well, that's fair enough then. But I mean, it's a very serious story, um, and we certainly see that in the art. I mean, bloody. A lot of these beans, it looks like their blood is green, but then you have bugs and swords and axes, and there's quite a few battles in the first issue. So for you as an artist, when you're illustrating that, I mean, is that just fun to just be able to go wild and, like bug guts and all kinds of weapons and that sort of thing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thing is like normally I'm a person who in reality I enjoy science and like all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to drawing, I really enjoy drawing fantasy and wild stuff from the imagination that wouldn't exist in real life.
Mm.
And this story has that in spades, and like that's all I gotta do. Like every page I create something new, and not something like from a basic derived from actual like history or something, but almost total fantasy and from our time, but also like because the story takes place today, but it also has um stuff that's from real life, like the plants and all the stuff. These guys are wearing that stuff for armor, and they're using all the real life objects as part of their lives, or like as their environment and things like that. So it's been crazy fun, drawing all those battles, all those creatures, and all these people that like every page I draw something new. It's I couldn't enjoy it more.
Yeah, I imagine you've had to do quite a bit of reference or research on what insects look like. So
Oh yeah.
it must not have been something I'm gonna draw comics when I grow up. I'm gonna have to study bugs. That probably wasn't
Yeah.
on your list, right?
Yeah, it was actually, I normally had this almost phobia against bugs and stuff, like most of my life, like I couldn't touch them, I couldn't look at them, like, but now I had to, so this actually helped, like it became some sort of forced therapy in a way, like looking at all these bugs and stuff like that. And like I have a certain new appreciation for all of it and all the insane things that bugs do in their like in their lives, so bringing that to life is something like very new to me, and also very eye-opening in a way.
Yeah, what about you, Jason? Because there's some sort of references in the first issue when we start off and we're kind of in the yard as it were. And there's some talk about kind of the colonies or what have you, but it's sort of tweaked to make it work in a sort of like, to use your term, a Game of Thrones type setting. So you're almost mixing your story with a little bit of reality, but then putting your spin on it.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a huge sprawling kind of fantasy world that Mahmoud and I are creating with all these different factions. But at the heart, this is still a story about a kid and his family. And this house, the Slaymaker family move into the dad died kind of mysteriously there years ago. The dad was this famous entomologist, and that's where the kid kind of stumbles upon this artifact that sets him on this path. But that house and that yard is the house I grew up in, and that's the backyard that I played in as a kid. I actually, the first version of the map that we have in the back of the book was a really shitty one that I drew myself. Um, so I mean the landscape of the yard, like where the shed is, where the brush pile is, there's a big burnt area where we burn our trash, the woods, like all that stuff that's where I played. That's where I played with Star Wars figures and He-Man toys, and I ran around with, stick swords whacking at the air, and I made up elaborate fantasy sagas and Tarzan stories and Batman stories like in my head like that. Looking back to me, like that backyard and those woods are kind of where I became a comic book writer, where I became a storyteller. So it's a very personal story for me in that sense. My actual backyard was not peopled with tiny barbaric bug warriors. Um, so that's a new addition, but landscape is the same, house is the same, and yeah, the as we this first issue, you get kind of a little tease of a big battle happening at an anthill between the Ant Imperium, who are kind of like the Roman Empire of the yard, and then you have the Beetle Riders are like, the barbarians. So they're always button heads. You get a little tease of like what the political landscape is like in the yard, and then you get the setup of the family drama as Slade finds his way into that. And going forward from that, it's Slade Slaymaker lost in his own backyard and encountering the beetle people, the ant people, the spider witches, the maggot monks, the wasp raiders, like all these different factions of bug warriors, which they're called mites, the tiny bug people. So it's this massive sprawling landscape contained within one, kid's backyard. Um, and this book one is like a 6-issue story that kind of introduces you to that whole landscape and takes Slade on this adventure that he may or may not survive. Since this is Game of Thrones, you never know.
Yeah.
Um, but like I said, this is book one, so this is like the beginning of what Mahmoud and I want to be a really long fantasy saga, and I think we're having so much fun, exploring this world and kind of when you see Mahmoud's designs for all these different factions of bug people, I think you'll see like this is a world we can spend a lot of time in and have a lot of fun with.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely got that sense, whether it's Slade or somebody else, you flash back to, his father. Um, you mentioned, being a personal connection for you and having this be your backyard. Is this a story that's been in your mind since then? Like, give us an idea of the impetus of the idea.
Well, I mean, I loved those kinds of stories when I was a kid, and Sword of the Atom was a big comic for me,
Mm.
which came out like mid '80s. The kind of the time I was just starting to get into comics, and if you haven't read that one, it's like the Atom gets stranded in the jungles of Brazil, I think, and he's stuck at his atom size, and he encounters this like hidden kingdom of tiny barbarians who ride frogs. So I loved that book. Um, and I think that kind of imprinted on me, and I've always had in the back of my mind to do a story like this. Um, the and it's just kind of built and developed over the course of many years. And then I think once Mahmoud and I did, our all of our Conan stuff together at Marvel, we did Conan the Barbarian and then King Conan. Um, I very, very much wanted to do this and build this world with him. I think, he's the kind of guy who can draw absolutely anything and pull it
Oh yeah.
off.
Yeah.
And I loved the stuff we did on Conan. I love, that especially that first Conan the Barbarian arc was like a lot of world building over the course of issue to issue because we were jumping around to different countries and different parts of
Yeah.
Conan's life every issue. Um, so Mahmoud handled all that. He's great at the action, great at the emotion, great at the fantasy world building. Um, so with this, we get the chance to kind of see Mahmoud and Matt Wilson. We have the same colorists from those Conan arcs too. We reunite them as a team, but we get to see those guys like fully unfettered. We don't have to worry about us being told no, that's too violent, no, that's too risque. Like we can
Right.
kind of do whatever we want.
So Mahmoud, when Jason came to you and said, "Okay, remember how much fun we had on Conan? Kind of the same thing, but with bugs." And you mentioned your aversion to bugs. So what was your thought when he brought this idea to you? Did you think it was really cool? Were you like, oh, I don't know if this is going to work?
Now, to be honest, at first I was scared because like bugs, like it, it's a whole new world. I probably never drew bugs in comics, maybe a tiny flies in the background or something.
Right.
But now I had to draw, a bug's face in detail or something in every panel, or so like first it was intimidating, but then I thought about it and it really grew on me. And like the thought of working on something like this was really exhilarating because like we had to build everything from the ground up, like ourselves. Nobody's controlling us. Like I had, Jason was always open to my input, and like I can always go to him with some ideas and stuff like that. And like we have all this back and forth. So like it really is something that where I can put out my creativity. Like it's much different than what I did for work for hire work. So it's truly a blast, and like it was scary at first. It still is because like I'm still like learning everything with every new page and every story, and like I'm thinking of the stuff that we're gonna do in the future, and everything will be something new, which is something that I always want in my uh, work. Like I want to grow, I want to do new things every time, and this book really allows that, and like actually feeds it. So I'm having the time of my life.
Yeah, when you say
Yeah,
creative input, you're talking about like character design, visual, but also story. I mean, you guys are kind of plotting this together. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, Jason is always open, but I don't really, like want to go step on his toes or anything.
Right.
If I have some ideas, like, like I just do put them out, but it's not too often.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, he's always open to it, which is great.
well, I think any creator-owned book like this, you have to remember that it's basically the two of us starting a small business together, right? Like this is
Yeah.
ours, we own it together. So that's I mean, I think that's why I like doing creator-owned books with people that I know that I kind of already have a relationship with. Mahmoud and I have worked together multiple things before. I think going back to Thor, was Thor the first time we worked together?
Yeah, that
That
Tour's special book.
generations, yeah.
Yep.
Um, so this is ours. This is our baby, right? It's like so, it's mine and it's his. So I don't think you can ever divvy up like which part belongs to which person. It's ours together. And yeah, he's brought so much of himself to this book. And I think what you'll see on every page right out of the gate with this first issue. And I would say one of the good and bad things about where we're at with this book is that issue one comes out in February. So it's February 12th, I think.
Yep.
Right.
Like Mahmoud just finished issue five, so we're starting to work on issue six. So we'll be done pretty much with this first arc by the time the first one comes out, which is already making me sad because I'm like, we gotta we got to dive right into the next, chapter because I'm going to miss this book too much if it goes away for very long. Like I'm having so much fun with it.
Yeah, so like
The good
Jason's,
thing, yeah,
oh, go ahead.
sorry, the good thing that we're so far ahead is that it means that we have a lot of time to prepare for the next arc. So
Right.
there's that.
Yeah, that's a luxury that you don't often have. But yeah, like
Right.
Jason said, everybody in comic shops on February 12th. Now's the time to let your retailer know, hey, I'm going to be picking this up. Maybe you thought it was like a Bug's Life and for kids or whatever. It's not. Like Jason said,
Don't let your kids read
Definitely
yeah,
this.
not.
it's mature. It's awesome. Like Game of Thrones reference is very appropriate. But yeah, again, like I always say, pre-order is the lifeblood of comics. That's how you can help Jason and Mahmood out. Let your retailer know you're going to be picking this
Yeah,
up.
and we've got some cool variant covers. We got a great peach cover that you can get like there's a regular version, then there's like I think a 1 in 100 virgin version. Got a Pepe Larraz cover, Matias Bagara. So some of our favorite artists, we were able to get covers from for this.
Yeah, and I imagine it probably wasn't too hard. Well, I mean, first of all, you've worked with a lot of them before, but their chance to draw something new. Hey, giant bug warriors. It's kind of cool.
Right. Probably nobody else was asking them for that. I don't think
Yeah.
there's a book out there quite like this one. I don't know that there's ever been a book quite like this one.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, it was so fun, and getting back to this idea of the two worlds, because we do see some kind of regular world stuff. I love those kind of stories too, Jason, where somebody gets kind of thrown in, but we do get a good sense of who this family is. There's a lot of emotion there. With you mentioned the death of the father, and there's some friction between the two brothers, um, Sydney and Slade. Uh, is it fun to have a book where you're doing the big bombastic action, but then you also have those really emotional beats that kind of ground the story and provide context for character growth?
yeah. I mean, I think that's always the mix. You kind of always have to have that. I think whether I was writing stories about Wolverine stabbing people or the Avengers fighting aliens or Thor flying around the cosmos, like you don't really care about any of that if you don't relate to whatever's happening in some way emotionally. So I think this is at its heart like a family story. It's a story of Slade who's kind of, he's a quiet, awkward kid um, who loves bugs, more into kind of understands bugs and can relate to them better than he can other humans. But loves his mom, has a great relationship with his mom, has a very contentious relationship with his brother, which becomes a huge part of the story that you'll kind of understand more of in issue 2. The didn't really know his dad because he died when Slade was so young, but there's his dad has some kind of connection to the yard that we don't understand just yet. So it's really a story about this kid, and who's very much a kid of today as well. Like, I'm writing it as a dad, as a dad who's been raising a teenager. Um, so um, so you got to have that part of it, I think, to guide you as you dive into the him fighting spiders and spider witches and Vikings who ride wasp and creepy maggot rearing religious figures and we go to Swarm City, which is the home of the beetle barbarians, which is under a brush pile in the yard. And of course, you got to have like a scene in a giant arena where he has to fight some kind of beast. We get to that in issue 2. Mahmoud was mentioning like, one of the fun parts of doing a story, like when people who are shrunk down to bug size is, the elements you do see of like human society. Well, some of it, there's a difference between like the mites who live in the yard and the mites who live in the house. We kind of get a little tease of the ones who live in the house, the roach knights, but we don't fully explore them just yet. But the ones who live in the yard are very much, kind of self-sufficient, but you do see parts of kind of humanity that creep in. So it's figuring out like, well, what would they make their clothes out of and their armor out of and their swords? So there's one I like. There are these guards in the arena who are kind of who armored up against the blood beasts, the creatures that are in the arena, and they're wearing like the like a steel wool kind of sponge, that you'd use to scrub your pot.
Yeah,
So they're wearing
yeah.
these like big, some it looks like a big puffy coat on them, kind of. So little bits like that are fun.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And when we get back to talking about this emotion in the story, one of the things that I really enjoyed Mahmood, and I'm not sure if this is purposeful or not, but when we first meet the family, it felt like you really were kind of like mid-range or even, pulled back, and we were getting kind of this overview of them, almost from the top looking down in a lot of the panels. And then as the action or the kind of character dynamic ramps up, it seemed like it zoomed in, and it felt a little more intimate, especially with the conflict between the brothers. So talk a little bit about laying those panels out when it's heightening up the emotional beats of the story and body language and that sort of thing.
I'm happily surprised you noticed that because that was yeah, partly intentional. Yeah. Um, yeah, starting out, we wanted to set up the family where they are, the backyard, in relation to the house and everything, and the house being specifically, based on, Jason's house that he grew up in and stuff like that. So I really actually, like, uh, I had a 3D model built of a house, to have this idea that I could use while drawing in the book. And so, like, at first, I wanted to show that, we're here, this is it, like, establish everything because, like, yeah, it made sense that, when things got, like, hot and heated and, like, things are going to get in motion, that we would pull in, see what's going on and see what these characters are feeling. So, like, that's what I really intended in those pages. And I'm glad it shows, because family is something that you normally don't always do in comics. You usually focus on a group of heroes or whatever and stuff like that. And this was a chance for me to do that. And it really meant a lot to me because, family has been increasingly something even more important to me with my son, growing up and everything. And, like Slade almost kind of, like is based on him in my mind as well, like when I'm visualizing and everything. So like I have this certain connection to these characters, like, and I try to put that into the story in some way, although there is very separate things happening in that and compared to my real life. But yeah, that was something that, like I really wanted to convey and, hopefully it shows.
Yeah, I mean, I think it worked really well because the other thing that it did is as we're kind of getting closer, like I said, we're zooming in on these characters and
Right.
getting into the kind of the character dynamic. Then when we switch back to the yard, the bug world, you can really get the sense of scope because now we've kind of pulled back and obviously Slade has to kind of discover, hey, where am I? What's happened? That sort of thing. So, I mean, that kind of storytelling, visual storytelling, Jason, that's exactly why you want to work with a guy like this, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, like I said, working with Mahmoud on Conan, he had to draw a lot of huge battle scenes and epic landscapes. But he's also so good at pulling in and doing like nailing just the core of the story, which are those human emotions. So I had no concerns about Mahmoud being able to pull off anything we were going to do. And like I said, I looked forward to him being unfettered. I think we both loved working on Conan for Marvel, but there were times, I think right out of the gate, like the first one of
Yeah,
the
the
first
first
pages
pages.
of our first issue of Conan, Mahmoud, do you want to tell this story?
Yeah, it was literally the first issue, the first spread after the first page, I think, was it? Yeah, there was this arena scene where Conan had to, in Jason's script, he would, like just swing and cut off the heads of two warriors in front of him. And I made a layout for this page, and like, and the page, we would see the head of one of the guys rolling, and it was really in front of the panel, and like it was big, and there was blood all around and stuff like that, and it was bouncing off the floor and everything. It was so much fun, like, we loved it, the grimness of it. But like once I sent the layout, from the editorial, we heard that like we couldn't show decapitation in that way and stuff like that. So like I had to change it up, and so So I had to kind of cover that up, and like we were kind of broken up about that
Yeah.
right off the gate, and like Jason was really loving that layout, and but we couldn't do it. So like in the opening scene of Bug Wars, the big war in the beginning of the story, like in the first battle scene where two armies clash. That's what I wanted to do. Like I just wanted to show a head being cut off and flying towards us. So you can see that over here. So like we got that out of our systems in this one.
Yeah, it's
And there
that
was
first.
nobody to tell us no.
Yeah, that first battle is so awesome, and it really talk a little bit about starting with that the story structure of giving us kind of an almost a third person narration, Jason, because it really does kind of establish the mythic feel of this world, and that they've been around for a long time, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you need that kind of traditional fantasy narration, right? To tell you
Hmm.
what the hell's going on, like who these people are and what the history is here, and kind of narrate the battle for you. And then I love writing that stuff. I love writing narration captions. I love fantasy stories. I think I've always been kind of a nerd of all different colors, and I'm into a lot of different things. But fantasy, if I had to pick one genre that's kind of stuck with me the most since I was a kid, is probably fantasy. So I love that. I love diving into the worlds. I love the names. I think the only thing with Bug Wars is we've been working on this for quite a while now, and I continue to go back and tweak and change names just to get them right. So they'll probably be doing that up until this issue one goes to print. So I love that stuff. I mean, the names are a big part of it, right? Like what these characters, what these different factions look like, where they live, what their house looks like, what they eat. Like all those things are an important part of like immersing you in the world. So I love falling down that rabbit hole and figuring all that stuff out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And and
it's a
I will say like as part of this first issue, the first issue is huge. It's basically two issues. It's almost 40 pages of story. But then you have some stuff, we have some back matter too that designed by the great Becca Carey, who I think is one of the best letters and designers working today. Um, she's also been doing the Absolute Superman that I work on, but she did these back matter pages. She did the map, like the crappy version of the map that I drew. She took and made pretty. And then we've also got some pages that are like excerpts from the dad's journals, Professor Slaymaker's journals, that are kind of facts on one of the sects. And in the first one, it's the ant imperium, the ant mites. So you get kind of insights into what their culture is like, and their bug facts too, which are, there's so many outrageous real life bug facts, like so many utterly bizarre insects, which become terrifying when you're the size of them,
oh,
right?
right.
Like, a beetle that sprays like boiling hot acid out of its butt. That's terrifying if you're small enough to have to be standing right in front of it. So
Yeah.
so each issue there will be kind of, real life horrifying facts about insects that you get all of that in the back of this issue.
Oh, that's fantastic. Because so I got a chance to read everybody, but the back matter wasn't there in the press
Oh
release.
yeah, sorry.
Already.
Yeah,
So
we hadn't
no,
included that
no,
yet.
that hey, that just gives me
You'll
something
just
else
have to
to.
wait. Yeah, you have
Yeah,
to wait
yeah.
till next month.
Yeah, that gives me something to look forward to. So, a reminder, everybody, February 12th, now's the time to let your retailer know. And like Jason said, they're practically done with the first arc here. So, it's not going to be a situation where a couple issues come out and you got to wait. The momentum's going to be continued through. It should be released on time. I've really enjoyed talking to you guys about this again. Thanks for letting me check it out early. Anything else you want to share with our audience before we close down here? Mahmoud, I'll start with you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know what to add. Like, this is really something that we are doing out of our hearts, like it comes from inside, and we're doing it with passion. And, like, I just hope it shows. And, like, we're really very excited to see how the people react to it.
Yeah, how about you, Jason?
Yeah, I have been super excited about this book for a couple of years, while we've been building this world and working on it. It's a book I've wanted to do for a long, long time. It's very personal to me in a, obviously a very strange way, but it is. It's a world I hope to explore. Hope Mahmoud and I can explore for a long, long time. And I will say like I had a good year last year in comics. I kind of the main things I was working on were Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Absolute Superman, which were big books, two of the biggest books of the year. This was the other thing I've been working on through that time. I kind of had three books I was focusing on. So the first two did really, really well. And we're very hopeful for, people will be excited about jumping on board with Bug Wars this year.
Yeah, and all three are amazing. Having read all three are amazing, everybody. And it must be fun, Jason, to have that variety, right? You work on one thing and then you totally switch gears, tell a different kind of story and something else.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing I get most excited about is doing different kind of books, and I have certainly never done a book quite like Bug Wars.
Yeah, cool. Well, when people do get a chance to check it out, if they want to give you a reaction, are you active on media at all, Mahmoud? Is there a place people can follow your work? Where's the best place?
Yeah, I'm almost everywhere. Just my name at Mahmud Asrar altogether, no dots, whatever. I'm on Instagram mainly, but I'm also on Blue Sky, Facebook, everywhere.
Great. I'll put links to Mahmoud's social media in the show notes, everybody. So if you're having trouble finding him, you can go there. What about you, Jason? Where I know you have like a Substack newsletter. Where's the best place
Yeah, that's
to
that's the
follow?
best place to kind of follow along with me is on Substack. I mean, I don't post as frequently as Tom Brevoort, but I try to send out an update when I can. I'll be doing more this year, hopefully. Last year I got very busy and with a lot of travel and bought a new house. Um, so this year I'll be trying to do that more often. But that's the best way to know like what I've got coming out, what I'm working on, all that sort of stuff. And I will say when you pick up Bug Wars #1, I wrote a little intro in the back, and we will be doing a letters column. So there's an email address in there you can send your thoughts to if you want to tell us what you thought of the issue or what bugs you would like to see us include in future issues. You can write in and maybe get your letter in a future issue.
Fantastic. I'll put a link to Jason's Substack in the show notes as well, everybody. So again, if you're having trouble, you can go there. So February 12th, Bug Wars. Don't forget, I'm sure we'll be reviewing in detail on our Indie Spotlight when it comes out that week, everybody. So you want to be sure to order this, let your retailer know that you want it. So again, gentlemen, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me today. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thank you for having
Thanks
us.
for having us.
And so everybody out there in the audience, whether you're checking us out on YouTube or listening to the audio only feed, we appreciate you taking the time. And we'll talk to you on the next one.